Germany entered World War II with a strong belief in air power as a battlefield weapon. But its approach to ground attack aviation was never as simple as purpose-built aircraft alone. This inventory follows every major German ground attack aircraft used during the war, presented in strict chronological order, explaining not just what flew, but why each design mattered at that moment. As we begin, consider this. Which of these aircraft do you think truly defined Germany's ground war from the air? Pre-war and early Doctrine ground attack aircraft, 1935–1939. Henschel HS-123. The Henschel HS-123 was Germany's first truly effective ground attack aircraft, even though it began life as a dive bomber in the mid-1930s. Its biplane design looked outdated by the start of the war, but its rugged construction and air-cooled radial engine allowed it to absorb heavy damage and keep flying. In early campaigns, the HS-123 proved extremely effective at low-altitude attacks, using machine guns and light bombs to disrupt infantry and artillery positions. Its success shaped German confidence in close air support long before more advanced aircraft were ready. Heinkel He-45. The Heinkel He-45 was originally designed as a reconnaissance and light bomber aircraft, but it was pressed into ground attack duties due to limited alternatives. By the late 1930s, it was already obsolete, with low speed and minimal defensive armament. Nevertheless, it played a supporting role in early training and secondary combat units, helping refine tactics for low-level bombing and battlefield coordination. Its limitations highlighted the need for specialized ground attack designs. Heinkel He-46. The Heinkel He-46 represented a transitional step between reconnaissance and direct battlefield attack roles. Equipped to carry small bomb loads, it was used in limited numbers during early operations and exercises. Its stable flight characteristics made it suitable for low-altitude work, but its vulnerability to ground fire restricted its combat lifespan. The aircraft contributed more to doctrinal development than battlefield impact. Junkers Ju-87A. The early Junkers Ju-87A, pronounced U-87, marked the prototype phase of what would become Germany's most famous ground attack aircraft. These early variants were underpowered and mechanically fragile, limiting their frontline use. However, they introduced the dive-bombing accuracy that would later define German close air support. The Ju-87A demonstrated how precision air attacks could directly shape ground operations. Dedicated dive bombers as ground attack platforms, 1939–1941, Junkers, Ju-87B Stuka. The Junkers Ju-87B was the aircraft that fully realized Germany's dive-bombing doctrine at the outbreak of the war. Entering service in large numbers in 1939, it combined precision dive attacks with strong psychological impact, reinforced by its sirens during attacks. The Ju-87B was highly accurate against bridges, armor concentrations, and defensive positions, making it invaluable during the invasions of Poland and France. However, its low speed and weak defensive armament made it increasingly vulnerable once enemy fighter opposition intensified. Junkers Ju-87R. The Ju-87R was a long-range adaptation of the Ju-87B, fitted with additional fuel tanks to extend operational reach. This variant allowed ground attack missions deep into enemy territory, especially during operations in the Mediterranean and over the Soviet Union. The extended range came at the cost of reduced bomb load, forcing crews to balance endurance against striking power. It demonstrated how operational needs pushed the Stuka beyond its original design limits. Junkers Ju-87D. The Ju-87D marked a significant evolution of the Stuka into a heavier, more robust ground attack aircraft. Improved engine power and better armor protection allowed it to survive longer in hostile environments. This variant increasingly focused on low-level attacks rather than steep dives, reflecting changing battlefield realities. The Ju-87D became a bridge between pure dive bomber and dedicated close air support aircraft. Armored Close Air Support Aircraft, 1941–1943. Junkers Ju-87G Kanonenvogel. The Junkers Ju-87G, nicknamed Kanonenvogel or Cannon Bird, represented a dramatic shift in German ground attack priorities. Instead of bombs, this variant was armed with two underwing 37mm cannons specifically intended for anti-tank warfare. Introduced during the later stages of the Eastern Front fighting, it targeted Soviet armor from low altitude, aiming for thinner top armor. While highly lethal in skilled hands, the Ju-87G was slow and extremely vulnerable, making pilot experience and air superiority critical to its success. Henschel HS-129A. The Henschel HS-129A was Germany's first aircraft designed from the outset as a dedicated armored ground attack platform. Built around a heavily armored cockpit bathtub, it prioritized pilot survival over visibility and comfort. Early A-series models were underpowered, limiting payload and climb performance, especially in hot or high-altitude conditions. Despite these flaws, the aircraft introduced the concept of survivability-focused attack aviation within the Luftwaffe. Henschel HS-129B1, B2. The HS-129B series addressed many of the A model's weaknesses by fitting more powerful engines and heavier weapon options. These variants carried a range of armaments, from automatic cannons to anti-tank guns, making them adaptable to different battlefield needs. The aircraft excelled at low-level attacks against vehicles in fortified positions but required fighter escort due to poor maneuverability. The HS-129B embodied Germany's most direct answer to the increasing threat of enemy armor. Fighter bombers adapted for ground attack, 1941-1944. Messerschmitt Bf-109E fighter bomber. The Messerschmitt Bf-109E was one of the first German fighters adapted for ground attack when battlefield demands outpaced available specialized aircraft. Fitted with bomb racks beneath the fuselage, it could strike troop columns, supply lines, and light vehicles before engaging enemy aircraft if necessary. While fast and agile, the added bomb load reduced performance and increased vulnerability during low-level attacks. Its use highlighted the Luftwaffe's growing reliance on multi-role solutions. Messerschmitt Bf-109F and G Jabo variants. Later, Bf-109F and G variants expanded the fighter-bomber role, often referred to as Jabos. These versions carried heavier bomb loads and, in some cases, underwing gun pods for strafing missions. They were effective for quick-hit attacks but lacked the armor protection needed for sustained close air support. As ground fire intensified, these aircraft increasingly suffered losses, revealing the limitations of adapting pure fighters to attack roles. Focke-Wulf FW-190A. The Focke-Wulf FW-190A proved far better suited to ground attack than the Bf-109 due to its radial engine and rugged construction. Its wide-track landing gear and strong airframe allowed it to operate from rough forward airfields. Armed with multiple cannons and bombs, it became a reliable strike aircraft against both soft and hardened targets. The FW-190A marked a major improvement in survivability for German fighter bombers. Focke-Wulf FW-190F and G. The FW-190F and G variants were optimized specifically for ground attack and close air support. These models featured additional armor and reinforced wings to carry heavier ordnance. While slower than pure fighter versions, they were far more effective in repeated attack runs. By mid-war, these aircraft formed the backbone of Germany's tactical strike capability. Heavy and twin-engine ground attack conversions, 1942-1944, Messerschmitt Bf-110 ground attack variants. The Messerschmitt Bf-110 was originally designed as a long-range heavy fighter, but by 1942 it was increasingly reassigned to ground attack duties. Its twin-engine layout allowed it to carry heavier bomb loads and multiple cannons, making it effective against supply columns and fixed positions. However, its large size and limited maneuverability made it vulnerable to enemy fighters and concentrated ground fire. In the ground attack role, the Bf-110 served more as a strike platform than a true close support aircraft. Messerschmitt Me 410 Hornisse. The Me 410 Hornisse, meaning Hornet, was an improved successor to the Bf-110 and represented Germany's most capable twin-engine strike aircraft. Equipped with powerful forward-firing armament and internal bomb bays, it was used for fast attack missions against high-value ground targets. Its higher speed improved survivability compared to earlier heavy fighters, but it still struggled when operating without air superiority. The Me 410 showed the limits of heavy attack aircraft in a sky increasingly dominated by Allied fighters. Dornier Du 217 ground attack adaptations. The Dornier Du 217 was primarily a medium bomber, but several variants were adapted for ground attack and anti-shipping roles. These aircraft carried heavy bomb loads and specialized munitions, making them suitable for attacking fortified targets and infrastructure. Their size and operating altitude reduced exposure to small arms fire but limited precision against moving battlefield targets. The Du-217's use in ground attack highlighted Germany's reliance on adapted bombers as specialized aircraft became scarce. Late war and emergency ground attack aircraft, 1944-1945. Junkers. Ju-87D5. The Junkers. Ju-87D5 represented the final meaningful evolution of the Stuka as a ground attack aircraft. This variant featured longer wings, improved armor protection, and heavier fixed armament for strafing missions. By this stage of the war, the Ju-87 was no longer used in classic dive bombing roles, but instead flown at low altitude against vehicles, infantry, and defensive positions. Despite upgrades, it remained highly vulnerable in airspace dominated by Allied fighters. Focke-Wulf FW-190D. The FW-190D, introduced primarily as a high-performance interceptor, also saw limited use in ground attack roles during the final months of the war. Its powerful engine and heavy armament allowed it to carry out fast strike missions against advancing Allied forces. However, the aircraft lacked the armor and endurance needed for sustained close air support. Its occasional ground attack use reflected operational desperation rather than doctrinal planning. Messerschmitt Me 262A-2A, Sturmvogel. The Me 262A-2A, nicknamed Sturmvogel or Stormbird, was the world's first operational jet-powered ground attack aircraft. Designed to carry bombs at high speed, it was nearly impossible for Allied fighters to intercept during its attack run. However, poor bombing accuracy, limited payload, and vulnerability during takeoff and landing severely reduced its effectiveness. The aircraft demonstrated technological ambition but arrived too late to influence the ground war. Late war emergency concepts. In the final phase of the war, Germany explored improvised and short-lived ground attack concepts, often involving simplified production or extreme tactics. These projects reflected collapsing industrial capacity and severe pilot shortages. Most saw little to no operational use, serving instead as indicators of strategic exhaustion. By 1945, German ground attack aviation had shifted from innovation to survival. German ground attack aviation began the war with confidence rooted in precision and coordination, but its effectiveness was tightly linked to air superiority and battlefield conditions. Early successes with aircraft like the Ju-87 created the illusion of a decisive and sustainable doctrine, yet those victories depended on weak enemy air defenses. As the war progressed, increasingly hostile skies forced Germany to rely on armored attackers, fighter bombers, and improvised conversions, each addressing specific problems but never fully replacing the strengths of earlier designs. Technological innovation continued, reaching its peak with jet-powered attack aircraft, but industrial collapse and pilot shortages undermined these advances. In the end, Germany's ground attack fleet tells a clear story: tactical brilliance without strategic endurance. Its aircraft evolved constantly, but circumstances evolved faster.